It's quiet. Late at night, the kind of quiet that makes everything feel louder. A woman is standing in her kitchen. The light above her is soft, almost too soft. Her phone is in her hand. Her salary hit 3 days ago. Her rent is paid. Her fridge is full. There's money in her savings, not millions, not luxury, but enough to breathe, enough to not panic, enough to say, technically, she's okay. And yet, she opens her banking app the way some people open bad news, carefully, almost bracing. She checks her balance once, then again. Then she starts subtracting, not what she owes, what she might owe. Things that are not even due yet, things that are not even real yet. And then, it happens. A face, a life, someone she saw earlier, younger than her, traveling more than her, dressing better than her, buying property before her, living like everything is already figured out. Her chest tightens, her body reacts, not slightly, immediately. Nothing has changed in her account, but something has changed in her body. So now there's a question, a quiet one, but a heavy one. How can a woman have money and still feel poor? Because some women are actually under pressure, real pressure. That is not up for debate. But this is a different kind of pain. This is the pain of not being broke, but never feeling safe. The pain of earning more than you used to, and somehow feeling even more behind. The pain of having evidence, numbers, progress, stability, and still trusting fear more than what is right in front of you. So maybe the real question is not just about money. Maybe it is something deeper, something quieter, something most people never name. What if your money problem is not always a money problem, but a perception problem? And just let that sit. Because this is where it gets uncomfortable. You can be doing better than last year and still feel worse than last year. You can have income and still feel exposed. You can have savings and still move like collapse is one inconvenience away. You can be admired for doing well while privately feeling financially fragile. That contradiction is not rare. It is quiet. It is common. And most women never say it out loud. Because how do you explain that nothing is technically wrong, but something still feels off? How do you explain that you have proof, but you don't feel proof? This is why a woman can sit with her own life and think, I know I'm not technically broke, so why do I feel broke all the time? This is why she delays joy, why she hesitates before buying something she can afford, why she replays purchases in her head like mistakes. This is why she panics after spending, feels guilty resting, and still believes quietly, constantly, that she is behind. Not loudly, not dramatically, just underneath everything. And here is where it becomes real. There is actually a name for this. Money dysmorphia, a distorted view of your financial situation, where your perception becomes disconnected from your reality. In a 2024 survey, about 29% of Americans said they experience this. For Gen Z, it rises to 43%. For millennials, 41%. So if this feels familiar, it is not random, it is patterned, and it matters because of one thing. The feeling is real, even when the conclusion is false, and that is what makes it dangerous. Because once you sit with it long enough, you start to notice something. This is not just about money. It only looks like money. Money dysmorphia is not simply bad budgeting. It is not always irresponsibility. It is not proof that you are dramatic, unserious, or ungrateful. It is something quieter than that. It is what happens when your emotional map of money no longer matches your actual position. So now you are not just reacting to numbers. You are reacting to meaning. Meaning you picked up a long time ago, meaning you absorbed without choosing it. Meaning that stayed, even when your life started to change. Meaning from childhood. Meaning from comparison. Meaning from survival. Meaning from status. Meaning from fear. And once you see it this way, the pattern becomes clearer. Because your bank account may be in the present, but your nervous system may still be living in a season where money meant danger. Your income may have changed, but your internal story may not have. Your reality may say, I'm stable, but your body may still say, we are one mistake away from humiliation. So now every decision feels heavier than it should. Every purchase feels more loaded than it is. Every moment of rest feels slightly undeserved. Not because you are doing something wrong, but because two versions of your reality are running at the same time, and they are not saying the same thing. That is the real conflict. And once you understand that, certain women start making more sense. Not because they are irrational, not because they are bad with money, but because what they are responding to is not always visible on paper. Take the woman who earns more now than she ever imagined she would back in college. On paper, she is doing well, better than she used to, better than the version of herself she once prayed to become. But every time she opens social media, she sees women talking about investments, homes, luxury skincare, soft life travel, retirement plans, building wealth early, and living like financial certainty is already normal. And something in her shrinks. Not because she has no money, but because the standard around her keeps moving. So objectively she is progressing, but psychologically she feels like she is losing. Then there is the woman who does everything right. She pays her bills on time. She saves. She avoids debt. She says no to nonsense. She is careful. She is responsible. She is the one people describe as good with money. But she still feels tense spending on anything that is not useful, not reckless spending, not indulgence without thought. Just simple enjoyment. Something nice. Something beautiful. Something that serves no purpose beyond pleasure. And even then, guilt arrives. To the outside world, she looks disciplined. Inside, she is not free. She is afraid. And then there is the woman who is raised around instability. Maybe money disappeared often. Maybe peace around money never lasted. Maybe every good season came with the feeling that something bad was close behind it. So now, even when she earns more, a part of her still expects it to vanish. She checks too often, thinks too far ahead, prepares for every possible problem, and still struggles to enjoy what is already here. She overchecks, overthinks, overprepares, and underenjoys. Not because she is weak, because unpredictability trained her body, before prosperity ever had the chance to retrain her mind. And this is why two women can have the same income and live in completely different financial realities emotionally. So now the real question becomes, where exactly is the distortion happening? Because if you do not know where it lives, you will keep trying to fix the wrong thing, and this is where the pattern becomes clearer. There are 4 layers to money dysmorphia, not 1, 4. And most women only ever look at the last one. The first layer is financial facts, what is actually true, not what you fear, not what you assume, not what social media made you feel 5 minutes ago. What is true? Your income, your expenses, your debt, your savings, your margin, your assets, the numbers, the reality. The part that can be measured. Then comes the second layer, financial perception. What do you feel is true? This is where the internal language lives. I'm behind. I never have enough. One wrong move and everything ends. Everybody else figured this out before me. I should be further by now. Notice those are not always facts, but they can feel more powerful than facts. Then comes the third layer, financial identity. This one goes deeper. What does money say about who you are, not what money does? Money means. Does it make you feel capable or failing, safe or exposed, powerful or dependent, chosen or left behind? Because for many women, money is not just about survival. It quietly becomes a mirror that seems to reflect whether you are winning, whether you are worthy, whether you are secure, whether you matter. And then comes the fourth layer, financial behavior. What do you do because of the story? Do you overspend, underspend, overwork, avoid investing, panic save, compare constantly, freeze when it is time to decide? This is the visible layer, the behavior people notice, the part most advice talks about. But here is the problem. Most women try to fix layer 4 without ever examining layer 2 and layer 3. They try to control the behavior without confronting the perception. They try to improve the habit without questioning the identity underneath it. And that is why more money does not always create more peace, because numbers can increase, while distortion remains untouched. And if distortion remains untouched, it usually feeds on 3 things. 3 forces that quietly shape how a woman experiences money, even when her actual situation has improved. The first is comparison inflation. In older generations, comparison was smaller. You compared yourself to neighbors, maybe coworkers, maybe friends from church, maybe people in your immediate circle. Now you compare yourself to edited lifestyles, curated success timelines, invisible family money, brand deals, credit, inheritance, and performance wealth. So the standard is no longer reality. The standard is theater. And that matters more than people think, because the brain is not neutral with repetition. What you see often starts to feel normal. What feels normal starts to feel expected. And what feels expected starts to make your own life look insufficient, even when it is not. So now a woman can be making progress in real life and still feel behind in the world she consumes every day. This pressure is not imaginary. A 2025 Bankrate survey found that 43% of U.S. adults say money negatively affects their mental health at least occasionally, and women reported this more than men, 45% versus 41%. So when a woman feels like money is not just math but mood, identity, fear, and comparison, she is not imagining that pressure. She is living inside it. The second driver is survival memory. Even after circumstances improve, the body can keep scoring money as a threat. You may no longer be in the season that shaped your fear, but your mind still prepares for it. That is why some women do not spend freely even when they can, and others overspend emotionally because deprivation made comfort feel urgent. Same wound, different expression. One woman becomes extremely restrictive, another becomes impulsive the moment she feels deprived. One clings tightly, another reaches quickly. But underneath both responses is the same question: are we safe yet? And if the body does not fully believe the answer is yes, it keeps reacting as if danger is nearby. Then there is the third driver, moving goalposts. This is where subtle fear becomes lifestyle. At first, safety feels simple. If I can just pay my bills. Then it becomes if I can just save $1,000. Then if I can just make 6 figures. Then if I can just own property. Then if I can just have what she has. And now peace keeps getting postponed. Not because you are greedy, because unhealed insecurity has no finish line. It keeps changing the requirement, keeps moving the standard, keeps whispering that the next milestone will finally make you feel settled. But when fear is in charge, arrival never really arrives. Because the issue was never only the amount, it was the meaning attached to the amount. And that is exactly why this matters beyond emotion. Because when a woman feels broke even when she is not, she usually makes one of 2 expensive mistakes. The first mistake is that she lives too small. She avoids investing, avoids visibility, avoids calculated risk, avoids help, avoids pleasure, avoids expansion. She becomes loyal to caution, even when caution is no longer protecting her. It is only shrinking her. So now she calls it wisdom, calls it being careful, calls it waiting for the right time. But underneath it, what is often happening is this: she is making her life smaller to match a fear that no longer fully matches her reality. The second mistake is that she performs wealth. She buys relief instead of building security. She spends to escape the feeling of being behind. She consumes symbols of progress instead of strengthening real position. Not always because she is reckless. Sometimes because looking okay feels easier than building slowly. Sometimes because the image of stability gives temporary relief from the feeling of inadequacy. Sometimes because performance is faster than peace, and that is where distorted perception becomes expensive. Because now the money is not only being used, it is being used emotionally. And here is why that distinction matters. According to the Federal Reserve's 2024 Household Well-Being Report, 63% of U.S. adults said they could cover a hypothetical $400 emergency expense using cash or its equivalent, and 55% said they had set aside money for 3 months of expenses in an emergency savings fund. That means 2 things can be true at once. Many people are under real pressure, and many others may still feel dangerously insecure even after they have crossed important stability markers. That gap between position and perception is where money dysmorphia lives. And if that gap goes unexamined for 5 years, it does not only affect your spending, it affects your standards, your career moves, your dating choices, your dependence tolerance, your ability to say no, your definition of enough, your relationship with rest, your ability to feel wealthy before looking wealthy. So this is not a small mindset issue. It becomes a life architecture issue. Because the woman who feels poorer than she is will often choose differently than the woman who sees clearly. She will stay longer in places that drain her, settle sooner than she should, shrink more than she needs to, perform more than she wants to, and call all of it responsibility, when really sometimes it is distortion wearing the clothes of discipline. This is where the shift begins. Not with more performance, not with pretending, not with forcing yourself to feel rich. The opposite of money dysmorphia is not arrogance, it is accuracy. Not pretending you are richer than you are, not ignoring structural realities, not acting like money pressure does not exist. Not shaming yourself for feeling fear. Accuracy. To see clearly. To name what is true. To stop letting comparison narrate your position. To stop calling yourself broke when what you really feel is unanchored. To stop confusing emotional unsafety with financial failure. Because those are not always the same thing, and for many women that realization is the beginning of peace. Not because life becomes perfect, but because the story becomes more honest. So now the voice starts to change. Money dysmorphia says if I don't feel ahead, I must be behind. Financial clarity says discomfort is not always danger. Money dysmorphia says if I cannot live like her, I am failing. Financial clarity says someone else's timeline is not evidence against mine. Money dysmorphia says, I need more money to finally feel safe. Financial clarity says I may need more money, but I also need a truer story. Money dysmorphia says my fear is proof. Financial clarity says my fear is data, not destiny, and that is the reframe. Not that your fear is fake, not that your concerns are silly, not that money does not matter, but that fear is not always a final answer. Sometimes it is an old signal. Sometimes it is comparison fatigue. Sometimes it is a nervous system using yesterday's language to interpret today's life. And the more clearly a woman can tell the difference, the less power distortion has over her. Maybe the deepest financial shift for a woman is not the day she earns more. Maybe it is the day she stops misreading herself. The day she realizes that feeling poor and being poor are not always the same thing. The day she stops calling herself behind, just because she is not performing abundance loudly. The day she understands that peace with money is not denial. It is discernment. The day she stops outsourcing her financial self-worth to the internet, to status, to speed, to appearances. Because a wealthy woman is not simply a woman with more money, she is a woman whose perception has become honest enough to hold her progress. A woman who can see her reality without shrinking it. A woman who can build without panic, spend without shame, save without worshipping fear, grow without constantly moving the finish line. And maybe that is the real code, not becoming a woman who looks rich, becoming a woman who can finally tell the truth about where she is, and build from there with power. If this exposed something you felt but never had language for, then this channel is for you. This is the Wealthy Woman Code.